Welcome to this version of Lee's Open Mic. Tonight, we got Adam Newman hanging out with us right there. Adam and I, we just met, but it's good to meet you, sir. I'm a fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just being introduced to your work, but in real time, I'm becoming a fan quickly.
Well, I was telling you about a gig I did where the comedy show was a surprise to the audience.
It's always the best when the audience doesn't know what they're in for.
Yeah. Which is, to me, I think that's the equivalent if you go to some sort of gathering and somebody says, surprise, I've got a Amway presentation I'm going to do for you. You know, it's something you didn't sign up for necessarily, and I don't really want to hear that.
No. If it's going to be a surprise, it has to be something, you know, it's a big surprise, we have a cake.
Right. Everybody loves cake.
Yeah, and if you don't like cake, then you shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Right.
Oh, man.
Have you had some gigs that have gone south or have been just...
Most of them.
Most of them go south on you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously when you travel to a city that your agent books you at, it's like, well, I don't want to say that all the time, but for the most part, you travel to a city that has a comedy club or a theater or whatever, that's great. But most of the time, the things we book on our own are terrible.
Yeah. Well,
I've had shows go south, and I've had shows that have started so far south that they're never gonna go north. But also sometimes you do a show that you think is gonna be horrible, and I try to do every show now with no expectations, but go in with a positive attitude. Right. I feel like that's the best way to do it.
I agree.
That way you're never too disappointed. You're never too surprised, and if you are surprised, it's usually in the positive kind of way.
Do you get to the point where if it looks like it's going south or it has already gone south, that you just sort of entertain yourself as to where you can relax? Well, I'm going to have fun even if you're not.
It's I'm not sure it's really the right thing to do.
Probably not.
But sometimes, sometimes.
But I'm not going to pander to these people who hate me already for some reason.
When you know for a fact that no matter how much pandering you do, no matter how much you try to cater to what they want to hear, you know it's not going to go well either way. You might as well try to get some enjoyment out of it for yourself. Right. And yeah.
There are moments, though, when you do that, you kind of get them back. They sort of relinquish their hate.
And what
like this guy, he's invincible to us.
Yeah.
And our hate. Let's enjoy this.
Yeah, so you go for it.
So now, where did you start? How did this all begin for you?
I did a very dumb thing when I started. And I was living in Athens, Georgia, where I went to college. And I knew I wanted to do it, and I didn't know about... There wasn't a big comedy club there yet. There wasn't a big open mic scene, anything like that. So I moved to New York.
Oh, that's stupid.
It was very stupid. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to become a big fish in a small pond wherever you're. You're supposed to do the local comedy clubs and become the local.
Yeah, not go get beat up in New York.
No, so
working
I moved
for free essentially.
Yeah. So I did my first open mic July 1st, 2006, and August 2nd, 2006. A month and a day later, I was already in New York doing mics and stuff.
Wow.
And got beat up and pushed around. And
but I mean, valuable lessons to be learned, but it still could have been learned probably there as a bulldog in Georgia.
Probably.
You know, isn't that Kostaki, Economopolis territory down there in Georgia?
Is he from there? I've only heard that name a few times.
Yeah.
I see
the biggest name in show business, as you know.
The longest name? Yeah, sure. Is that his catchphrase?
That's his catchphrase.
Yeah, cool. That's great. I know his name. I see him. I see that his posters are at clubs sometimes weeks before and after me, but I don't know. I didn't know him down there. He's a little, he's like an old guy, right?
Oh, yeah, he's old.
He's older than me.
So what, the New York thing for you?
I did 9 or 10 years in New York.
Yeah, but eventually, I guess you learned to navigate that society of comics, right? And
well, there's so many open mics and little bar shows and ways to fly under the radar without anybody seeing you that you don't want someone from Comedy Central to see you when you're 2 years in, bomb, and they got a bad taste in their mouth for when they see you a few years later. So luckily, nobody saw me for 4 or 5 years, and then. Eventually, when I did start doing well on stage and they saw me, they were like, who's this new guy? And I got to, audition and make a better impression.
One of my favorite things to do is when I'm punishing an audience like that that's not enjoying my show is I let them know that HBO is in the room.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Guys, please laugh. This is Conan bookers are here.
This was my one shot.
Yeah.
And you
ruined it for me.
Yeah. Who were some of your influences growing up? Who did you love?
Growing up, Well, my mom gave me her vinyl record collection of comedy albums when I was like a little kid. So I was literally in first grade listening to George Carlin records on a Play School record player.
Yeah.
Like that's the first time I remember liking I didn't even understand it. I was listening to 7 words you can't say on television. Right. I can recite them all, and I was 7 years, I was, what, even first grade, 7 years old, 8 years old, and I didn't even get the jokes. I just heard that he's on my record player swearing, and there's an audience laughing. Right. I'm like, this seems like a good job. Yeah. Every time you get told not to swear and stuff, and you're listening, you're like, this guy's clearly making it work for him. So I used to love that. I had Cosby records too, which were clean, but it turns out clean doesn't mean you're the better guy. So,
no, it doesn't.
But Cosby obviously was an influence on me when I was a kid. I used to rush home after school, and I grew up in the in the 90s where the era was when I got home from school, they would do marathon blocks of Saturday Night Live and Kids in the Hall back to back on Comedy Central. Yeah. So I used to like sketch comedy a lot too. And
isn't it fun now to watch so many comics have to be apologetic for their love of Bill Cosby?
It's a weird thing. Well,
it's very weird.
There's no denying the greatness of his comedy and his sitcom.
Genius.
And what he has done in life is so horrible that it is actually now, I think it's impossible to separate the artist from the art.
At this moment, it is.
At this moment, it is. I cannot listen to Cosby's stand. I cannot watch his show without just feeling disgust towards him. So it sucks. But there's no denying he was an influence on me when I was a kid.
I think he's an influence on American comedy. Period.
He's on American culture.
So now, what is in the future for you? What are you hoping for? I mean, who do you want to emulate? If there's anybody out there that you love.
I like the comedians that have found a nice that have found places that have found. Jesus. The comedians who act and do stand-up. I want to be able to
like a Gaffigan, like
I love Gaffigan.
Brian Regan kind of guy, does his own thing.
See, Brian Regan is what I would maybe ideally love to do because he's not doing so much.
He didn't have to.
Brian Regan doesn't. I feel like Brian Regan isn't freaking out about I got to sell my pilot to a network. Brian Regan has just been such a strong, consistent stand-up for so long, and he's developed a fan base that he can run around touring theaters and Gaffigan was like that to a certain degree too. Gaffigan's had his pilots and has had his TV shows, but he's known as a stand-up for sure. I'd love to be known as a stand-up who gets funny parts and shows, and at some point, if I can sell my own TV show, I'd like to do that as well. And that's why I'm living in LA, running around trying to sell a show, trying to act in shows, and in the meantime, keep doing stand-up at the same clip I've always been doing.
Well, good luck to you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with me today.
No problem.
Appreciate
Thanks for having me.
It's Adam Newman right there, guys. Thanks for watching this version of Lee's Open Mic.
Bye.